If one person makes a mistake, it's not just that person who is punished. Their family, their neighbors, their pets, and even people lose connection to them can all be implicated. So in Pichon, only two professions are allowed, farmers and soldiers. Hello everyone, I'm Bruce.
I'm Zoe.
Today we're going to talk about a banned book from ancient China, Shang Jun Shu. It's also called the Book of Lord Shang. This book can be considered the Chinese version of The Prince, but it's even more ruthless and even colder. If you understand this book, you will understand one thing: how to control people and build a high centralized state. And China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, unified China for the first time after learning from this book.
So, who wrote this book?
Who wrote this book? Well, that's a good question. It is that this book was written by Shang Yang, the prime minister of Qin Shi Huang. Another view is that it was compiled by his followers and other scholars based on his ideas. So what exactly does this book talk about? In one sentence, the goal is to make the state strong at all costs. So Zoe, if you want everyone to listen to you, what should you do first?
Unify their thinking.
Oh, that's very good. Exactly, you already have what it takes to be a dictator. Okay. So the first step is control thought. But the question is, why start with controlling thought? Because the book's logic is very simple. The simpler people think, the easier they are to control. Once people begin to think, they become hard to control. So when a person starts thinking, they usually do three things: compare, question, and choose. Think about it. When you think through things, do you always go through those steps?
Yes.
Let's imagine you live in a country called Peachland. The king of Peachland has a rule: no one is allowed to drink orange juice because orange juice is poisonous. Growing up in Peachland, you've always believed this and never questioned it. Until one day, you go to another country and find that everyone there drinks orange juice, but they all look completely healthy, nothing like they've been poisoned. At that moment, your thinking begins to change. You enter the first step of thinking, comparison. You started asking, why are they fine? They drink orange juice every day and they even seem healthier than you. Then comes the second step, questioning. You begin to wonder, was what I believed before actually true? Is the king of Peachland lying to us? Is it actually false that orange juice is poisonous? Then comes the third step, choice. Finally, you think, if it's not poisonous, why don't I try it? And the moment you reach this point, the king of Peachland control over your thinking has already begun to break down. You are no longer just someone who follows the rules. You have become someone who judges them. So you will realize the problem was never the orange juice. The real issue is whether you ever had the chance to encounter it. The Book of Lord Shang also explains in details how to control thought. The first steps: restrict useless knowledge.
In Peachland, everything related to the orange juice is useless.
Yeah, that's right. In Peachland, they will tell everything about orange juice is useless knowledge. In Peachland, no one studies orange juice, and even things seem advanced like philosophy, debate, and independent thinking are all seen as useless. Because these things have one thing in common. They make people start to think, compare, and question. So in this system, what is truly being restricted is not orange juice itself, but your ability to question authority.
What if someone says orange juice isn't pointless?
Poisonous?
Yes?
So the second step is suppress different voices. If someone says orange juice is actually not poisonous, they are immediately defined and suppressed. Because once two voices exist, orange juice is poisonous and orange juice is not poisonous, people will begin to compare and question. So in this system, there can only be one voice. And the third step is to unify thinking. In the end, growing up in Peachland, you will naturally come to believe one thing: not drink orange juice is the right choice. And gradually you will no longer feel this is an order, but rather your own choice. And that is the most frightening part. No one forces you to not drink orange juice. Yet you have never ever thought, can I try it? Because from the very beginning, what the king restricted was not your behavior, but the boundary of your thinking. But controlling thought alone is not enough. Now comes the second step. Zoe, what do you want to do in the future?
Become a photographer.
Okay, but in Peachland, there are only two jobs are allowed. So this is the second step, restrict behavior. And this point is stated very directly in Book of Lord Shang. In the state, people's career choices are strictly limited. A person's value lies only what they can contribute to the state. The king of Peachland is very ambitious. He wants to conquer the world. So in Peachland, only two professions are allowed, farmers and soldiers.
Why these two professions?
Because farmers provide food and soldiers fight wars. You will notice that both professions serve war. Being a photographer in Peachland is not allowed because these professions don't serve war, they have no value. Second, they can even be dangerous because they are not obedient enough. Once merchants have money, they no longer fully depend on the state. Once writers begin to spread ideas, people start to think, and thought becomes hard to control. Third, these professions also have another problem. They consume resources. People who could farm go into business, people who could fight go into writing, which means less food and fewer soldiers. For a country who wants to conquer the world, this is unacceptable. So King of Peachland leaves most people with only two choices, farm or fight. The entire country becomes a machine. Some people produce food, some people go into battlefield, repeating this cycle endlessly. Behind this, there's a deeper logic. People are no longer independent individuals, they become resources. Resources that can be arranged, allocated, and maximized. Reward and punishment system. But there's a problem. Even if the king has already controlled your thoughts and limited your choice, you still might not be willing to risk your life for him. So the third thing the Book of Lord Shang does this, and it redefines what successful means. What success means to you, Zoe?
More money and higher social status.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. But in Peachland, a person's status should not be determined by their background, nor by their wealth, but by how much value they create for the king. And in a country that is constantly expanding and fighting wars, the greatest achievement is military merit. In other words, in Peachland, your status does not depend on who your father is, nor on how rich your family is, but on whether you have fought for the king. The greater your military achievements, the more land, rewards, and status you will receive. On the other hand, if you're contributing nothing, you have no status. You are a loser.
That sounds kind of fair because it doesn't depend on the background, only on ability.
Yeah, but the problem is the ability here only means one thing, the ability to fight for the state. This is where the Book of Lord Shang is truly clever. It redefines what kind of person is considered valuable. In Peachland, a merchant may be good at making money, but if he cannot help the king expand his territory, he's not truly important. A scholar may be intelligent, but if he cannot help win wars, his intelligence is not that important. As long as these things cannot be directly turned into food, soldiers, or military achievement, their value is reduced in this system. So you will realize this book is not simply rewarding the good and punishing the bad, it is doing something deeper. It is rewriting the entire value system of society. In normal society, people may pursue many things wealth, reputation, freedom. But now, the King of Peachland leaves you only one real path upward military merit. What does this mean? It means you don't need to be forced onto the battlefield, you will go there yourself. Because you know, if you want a better life, if you want to change your destiny, the only effective way is to fight for the state.
Fight.
Fight for the state. At this point, control has evolved. The first two steps were external control, not letting you think, not letting you choose, but this step becomes internal motivation. You no longer obey out of fear, but because you want to climb higher and gain rewards. So you actively join the system and even willing risk your life for it. At this point, the entire country becomes a massive war machine. Everyone is thinking, how can I achieve more than others? How can I climb higher than others? On the surface, people are competing for themselves, but in reality, all competition ultimately serves the king. This is the most brutal part of this system. It turns individual desire into fuel for the state machine. In the previous step, people were turned from individual to resources. In this step, those resources begin to operate on their own.
I don't want to play this game. I'll even rebel.
Well, you are very brave, Zoe. There will always be people like you who don't want farm, don't want to fight, or even start to question the rules. So how does the Book of Lord Shang deal with the problems like you? The answer is very simple. Make the cost of breaking the rules extremely high. In this system, the ultimate purpose of law is to create fear. So, how do they do it? The first step is heavy punishment for small mistakes. Impatient, if you run the red light just once, you might be detained for 7 days. Why? Because the goal is not just to punish the behavior, but to make everyone afraid of making mistakes from very beginning.
That actually doesn't sound too bad, right?
Yes?
At least no one will run red lights.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. But the punishment don't stop there. There is a collective punishment. In Book of Lord Shang, if one person makes a mistake, it's not just that person who is punished. Their family, their neighbors, their pets, their pets, and even people lose connection to them can all be implicated. So in Patreon, you don't just have to control yourself, you also have to constantly watch others. You wouldn't want your cat to end up in prison, right?
Yes?
You wouldn't want your Mimi end up in prison, right?
Yes, my Mimi.
Yeah, or Mimi, you don't want Mimi to end up in prison, right?
Yes.
Because someone else's mistake could also cost you. So the entire society becomes everyone watching everyone, everyone living in fear. This society doesn't need many secret police because everyone becomes one. And the next step is encourage reporting. The king encourages you to report others and even rewards you for doing so.
That's terrifying. I wouldn't even know who might report me.
I'll report you. I'll report you first.
Okay.
Mimi's gonna report you.
Okay.
Exactly. So you can never be sure who is watching you or who will report you. Your friends, your neighbor, and even your family could become informant. In such a society, trust between people gradually disappears. And for an individual, the safest choice becomes complete obedience to the king. So you will realize laws in this book are not meant to make society better, they are meant to make people afraid to resist. In Peachland, you don't need to believe the system is right, you only need to obey. The king replaces everything with fear. So now let's look back at everything in Book of Lord Shang. Step 1, control thought so you don't think. Step 2, restrict behavior so you have no choice. Step 3, use rewards so you willing give your all. Step 4, use harsh law so you completely obey. When all four steps are complete, a country becomes a stable and efficient machine, and people are no longer independent individuals, but become gears and screws in this machine. But the question is, does this system really only exist more than 2000 years ago? Or has it simply changed its form and continued to exist? When you go about your daily life, have you ever thought, is this really your own choice? Or is it what the system wants you to do? Maybe most terrifying thing is not control itself, but that you believe it is your own idea. Are you really making choice? Are you really making choice? Are you really making choice?